All right. So I guess just give your general takeaway thus far of at least what you experienced being on the witness stand.
Sure. So it's good questions from both sides, and just trying to prove their best case and asking for as much detail as they can to make the best argument they can.
What do you think are some of the most poignant questions that you feel gets the crux of the case here?
The state seems to be attacking the use for self-defense case rather than common lawful purposes that latest Supreme Court rulings instead. And the plaintiff attorneys are going for that all lawful purposes and in common use.
You talked about some of the forms that you required, everything from the FOID card to the ID to even what sounds like kind of you expanded a state-required question on occupation for concealed firearms. Is it my understanding you expanded that kind of just a general question for all firearms?
Yes.
Talk about that. I guess what you felt was some of the trajectory that the defense and also the plaintiffs were trying to get at there.
Sure. So the plaintiffs would love to show that people use these for all kinds of lawful purposes, and the defense would love to show that it's not used for anything other than self-defense, and is more of a military firearm that's not suitable for personal protection or defense.
Your understanding of if these are used for something, like what is, I guess if you can, your understanding of what using a firearm for self-defense is?
Sure. So it doesn't have to be actually fired for self-defense or even brandished for self-defense or shown to an attacker. Just the mere purchase of it or the intent of using it for protection of home would be a self-defense use. Many of our customers, and hopefully none, will ever have to fire a shot in self-defense, but many of them do buy for that purpose.
How much business have you lost since PICA was enacted?
So we've lost probably 20 to 30% of sales of firearms of that type, and just customers in. A lot of range users aren't coming in with those types of rifles either for fear of reprisal from the state.
Have you guys then tried recovering from that?
Some of the sales have shifted to non-restricted by PICA firearms, so more handguns. There are one or two alternatives that are out there that aren't regulated by PICA yet, but the state can change those anytime they feel like each year.
And those are which ones? Which kinds?
The two that come to mind quickest are the Ruger Mini 14 and Mini 30 and the SKS rifles.
Okay. And I guess what we were trying to really kind of get across to the judge and to everyone in the courtroom while you were up there.
Trying to get across that common people own these guns. It's not just a military firearm. It's not issued out to the military. It's these are things that people buy for lawful purposes.
Hey, anything else top of mind? What do you want to see happen here?
Of course, we're a little biased on one side of the case. We'd like to see our side win. But the biggest thing is that the rights are restored to Illinoisans who've had these things basically stolen from them. We've had hundreds of customers since PICA was enacted who aren't able to pick up their purchases, and they're stuck with no money and no items they paid for. Both those that have bought it from us and from elsewhere and had them sent in.
Are you guys able to sell AR-15s to out-of-state residents?
We can, but it's extremely uncommon. So we'd sell a few a year before times, and now Missouri and other surrounding state customers aren't even asking.
But you still have the ability. Somebody could come in from Iowa.
Correct, yeah. My understanding of the way PICA works is we would have to send that to Iowa to a dealer in their home state, which is a hurdle most out-of-state people don't want to deal with.
This was enacted January 2023. Here we are, mid-September 2024. We've seen this thing bounce up to the U.S. Supreme Court, at least on preliminary issues. How confident are you of what McGlynn could do, but how worried are you that it couldn't possibly be reversed by the appeals court and just continue to be the law of the land?
Well, based on what happened the last time with the injunctions, I wouldn't expect the appeals court to do anything different. It seems like the panel that they drew is not very friendly to the Second Amendment and to the arguments from the plaintiff's attorneys.
Well, just there's other cases that could go to the U.S. Supreme Court beforehand. Are you hopeful?
Yes, there's a case that's pending cert right now out of Maryland that we're hoping will get to the Supreme Court and just stop all the AR bans nationwide.
I was going to say, like, how confident would you be if this were to be the decision that for you at Supreme Court?
I think in the end, especially with the recent rulings from the Supreme Court on firearms, there's no historical analog that says you can regulate a certain type of firearm. The argument that you couldn't buy a cannon, well, most of the cannon at the time of the Revolution were owned by individuals. A lot of private warships were owned by individuals. So those are arms that were protected under the Second Amendment at the time and still are. In fact, we have several cannon that are in our shop. So it's restriction for the sake of feeling good. You heard the state's opening statement that said Highland Park, and that was absolutely a tragedy. And don't let anything that I say take away from that. It was. But the fact that crime happens doesn't mean we restrict the rights of the law-abiding. There are millions and millions of firearms, over 400 million firearms in the country. If law-abiding gun owners were the problem, we'd have a lot more problems, I would think.
You mentioned Highland Park. Your reaction as somebody who has to require a FOID card, who has to tell people you can't leave this place with this firearm for several days without this background check. Somebody who's required to go through that and could face severe penalties if you don't.
Yes.
What are your thoughts to seeing how the state police dropped the ball on the Highland Park shooting, the accused shooter?
Well, Highland Park and Aurora both had similar problems. The shooters were both people who should never have had a firearm, and they somehow still got FOID cards. One almost got a concealed carry permit and was rejected for that. But they want the law-abiding citizens to follow, and when they fail and make a mistake, it's just oops, and nothing happens, except more restrictions on the law-abiding.